Welcome to Business Connection. I'm Liz Spencer. I have a fascinating guest in studio with me today. It's Scott Boyer. He's the CEO of OWP Pharmaceuticals. Scott, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Liz, for having me.
Now, I think you have a wonderful story, but to get your story started, let's start a little bit with your background, because it sets it up nicely.
Yeah, certainly. I spent 11 years with Abbott Laboratories, 16 years with Bristol Myers Squibb, and a couple years as a pharmaceutical consultant. So almost 3 decades in the pharmaceutical industry. Pretty much shortly after I got out of college, I started in the pharma business.
Wow. So this pharma business led you to start OWP.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to have a successful career with big pharma, as it's known, and basically there were things about the industry that concerned me. They obviously provide great medications that change people's lives and extend people's lives. But the one thing I saw in the research I did for big pharmaceutical companies is that a lot of people in low and middle income countries around the world sit on the sideline and they don't have access to the same things we do. And that's what drove myself and the other colleagues at OWP to start this company.
So what is OWP doing differently from the big pharmas that we know of?
Well, our focus is it is important to be profitable, because if you're not profitable and you're not making money, you can't do good work. So the thing that we're different is we've connected it with a not-for-profit company called ROW Foundation, which stands for Rest of World. And what most people don't realize is that the large pharmaceutical companies really focus on the wealthy countries with the significant health care plans. You know, the United States, Canada, Japan, maybe the wealthy countries of the EU. But out of the approximately 200 countries that are out there, that's probably about 20 to 25 countries. So if you're in a low or middle income country in Africa or Latin America, you don't have access to the same things that we do here in the United States. Even low-cost generics are not available in some of these countries. And our focus was to impact not only folks here in the United States that have epilepsy, but also those under-resourced people that have epilepsy in those low and middle income countries.
Now, you chose one disease.
Correct.
And this is epilepsy.
Absolutely. Epilepsy is our focus.
And so tell me, how did you come to make that decision?
Well, as we did market research with neurologists and epileptologists, they said if we came out with a branded generic in this space, and there are branded generics in dermatology, in blood disorders, and other areas, but not in epilepsy, it's something they would consider writing. And obviously, if they wrote the product, and the prescriptions would flow, we would get a revenue stream from that. So that's one reason, is creating a profitable business. Secondly, is that epilepsy is actually relatively straightforward to diagnose and relatively straightforward to treat if you have all the tools. So right now, if you're in the United States and you have epilepsy, chances are out of 10 people who are diagnosed, 7 of those will either be treated effectively to where they have no seizures or so few seizures they can live a relatively normal life. But you can imagine if you're in a low-income country, if you put 10 people there that are not diagnosed and not treated, their life is unfortunately filled with stigma and negative issues. So if we can just reach those people, help diagnose and treat them with generically available medications, 7 out of 10 of those people could potentially live a normal life. And that was what I guess drove us to create this model focused on epilepsy, because the impact would be so significant in these other countries.
Well, and I think, epilepsy drugs have come so far in the last 50 years.
Yes.
The stigma in the United States with epilepsy has dropped, but not the stigma associated overseas. And so.
That's very true. And actually, I can guarantee people with epilepsy, but they don't necessarily tell you because they're treated successfully. So there's no reason to bring up, I've got epilepsy, but it's under control with my medications. Obviously, if you're in a low-income country, like Kenya, for example, and you're being untreated, it's obvious that you have epilepsy. And of course, in that type of country, the stigma that goes along with seizures obviously is very negative.
Very negative, and something that we don't see anymore in our public schools or things like that. Now, when you have a sales force that goes out and sells this generic drug to the epileptic doctors out there, how do they perceive and receive it?
Well, our market is basically neurologists and epileptologists. That's our focus. And honestly, when we first go in and we explain our model of what we call a pharmaceutical social enterprise, they look at us like we have three eyes, because they don't think of social enterprise when they think of big pharma. And so it takes them a little while to understand the model, but they're enthused and they're excited about what we're attempting to do. But it is very unusual, and there is no other model in the pharmaceutical industry similar to ours at this time.
That's awesome. I have a quote that means a lot to you that I want to read for our viewers, and I want you to comment on it. It says, the quote says, "It says a lot about us as a human race if cures or effective treatment for disorders or diseases are available, and we choose consciously or unconsciously not to deliver them to everyone in need."
Right.
Very powerful.
Yeah, and you know what? And again, for almost 3 decades, I worked in big pharma, and the truth is, I consciously, or Big Pharma consciously, doesn't necessarily provide all their medications to the 200 countries that are out there. Again, they focus on 20 to 25. And this was heartbreaking for me, especially as drugs, even after they go off patent, they become generically available. Those inexpensive generics are still not available in a lot of those countries. And you'd think they would be, but it just isn't the case. So getting these medications to those people in disease states like epilepsy, where literally you have a batting average of 700. 7 out of 10 patients that are diagnosed with epilepsy can live a relatively normal life if they have the medications. That's what broke our heart and drove us to create this unique model.
That's wonderful. You've had some early success stories. Can you share a brief one with me?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We placed an EEG machine in Armenia with a pediatric neurologist in Yerevan, and it is changing the lives of children where they're able to diagnose them effectively. It's a long-term video unit, so you can do a 24-hour video, et cetera, to monitor seizures, and you can make adjustments in therapy, and it could even lead to potentially a successful surgery in the right type of epilepsy to eliminate the epilepsy as well. And we have other projects planned, including one in Kenya that'll be coming up this fall.
And that all flows through ROW.
Yes, Rest of World. The Rest of World Foundation.
Which for OWP is an equity partner.
An equity partner. We are not giving them money in order to do their good work. We've structured it like a local company called Tyndale House Publishing. We really copied their model, where the not-for-profit owns part of the for-profit company. Therefore, they're not looking for gifts from OWP. They own, so therefore they get a percentage of the profits flow automatically into ROW Foundation, and so it's sustainable long term. Most not-for-profits rely primarily on donations, which can be very, very difficult and hard to sustain. This creates the opportunity where it's sustainable long term. I know that Paul Reagan, who's the president of the ROW Foundation, does accept donations, but long term, the majority of funding for ROW will flow out of OWP Pharmaceuticals in the form of profits.
That's awesome. Scott, thanks so much for stopping by and telling us all about it. You are going to change the world, and I'm just honored to have met you now. So.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. I appreciate meeting you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Good luck. We'll be right back with more Business Connections. Stay tuned.